Today we're going to be making a bechamel, which is one of the mother sauces in classic French cookery. Our ingredients are going to be milk, flour, and unsalted butter to make a roux, which is the thickener, Mirepoix, which is carrots, celery, onions, and garlic, shredded cheese of your choice, which is going to be used to take our bechamel and turn it into a Mornay sauce or a cheese sauce, and aromatics of your choice. In this case, I'm using a fresh bay leaf and a sprig of rosemary. The first step when making a bechamel or making a velouté, which are two of the 6 mother sauces in classic French cookery, we make a roux. And what a roux is it's approximately equal parts unsalted butter and flour that's made into a cooked paste, and that becomes the thickener for both of those sauces. The way that you want to melt the butter is over very low heat so that you don't caramelize any of the solids in the butter. Once the butter has been completely melted over low heat, it's time to start adding the all-purpose flour and several additions. Once the flour is added, continuing over low heat the whole time, we want to incorporate our flour into a paste. But ultimately, we want this paste to come together into one piece, one ball more or less. There'll be very little in other parts of the pan. And it's important to do this over low heat so that we don't cook the cellulose too much in the flour, which would result in it losing its capacity to thicken the sauces that we're going to use this with. And in order to cook out the raw flour taste, we will continue cooking it until it smells has a smell very similar to peanut butter. That's a good way to tell when a roux is done. At this point, we can see there's been enough flour added for most of this roux to come together in the same part of the pan. So we are almost there with the amount of flour that we want to add. There we go. Once we have enough flour to clean up the entire pan like this, that's about what we're looking for. Now we just want to continue cooking to cook the raw flour taste out of it. And the indicator again is when it smells like peanut butter. Slight nutty aroma is when it's done. At this point, our roux is done, and it's important to take our roux and remove it from the pot that it was made in so that it doesn't scorch. Roux is not super perishable. You can make it ahead of time and keep it out at room temperature for several weeks before you have to worry about it going bad. The next step for making our bechamel after making our roux is we have our Mirepoix, which is carrots, celery, and onion. There's also garlic and whole milk. And we're going to add a pinch of salt to that. And now we are just going to bring this up to a quick simmer. And then after it comes up to a simmer, we're going to put our aromatics in it, in this case a bay leaf, and just shut it off to steep for about 10 minutes. The Mirepoix is optional if you're in a rush or you want to skip this step. You can just bring your milk up to a scald as well. That's a corner you can cut if you'd like to make a quick sauce. Now that our milk and Mirepoix is up to a scald, I'm going to add our aromatics, shut this off, and let it steep for 10 to 15 minutes. At this point, our Mirepoix has steeped in the milk for 10 or 15 minutes or so, and now using a fine mesh strainer, also called a chinois, we are straining the solids out of it. And when we strain things like this, we don't want to push with a ladle or any other tool to get the most liquid or most yield out of it as possible. We just want to tap the side of it. That way, nothing that's going to interfere with texture is going to pass through the chinois. Now we have our roux in a bowl to start thickening our sauce. Now that our infused milk is up to a scald here again, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And add a small amount at a time so that I can create a nice thick paste type consistency, completely smooth and free of lumps, that we're going to then add back to the pot with our infused milk. A real old school classic thing to do when making a bechamel is to add a very small amount of fresh grated nutmeg, but we are not going to do that. It's a matter of preference. It doesn't really affect the integrity of the sauce overall if you don't add nutmeg. I very rarely add nutmeg myself. So now we have a nice smooth consistency here with no lumps. And what we're going to do is we are going to add it to our hot infused milk. And again, we are going to bring this up to a simmer and keep it at a simmer for about 3 minutes. And that will allow us to achieve full thickening capacity. I have to look this up. This came up to full thickening capacity very quickly because I'm using a small amount in a very conductive pan because it's enamel coated cast iron. So we are actually there already. You can see how thick that is. Very thick sauce type consistency. And from this, we are going to make a Mornay sauce, which is considered a compound sauce. It's a bechamel that has cheese melted into it. So grated cheese of your choice. This is a great filling for macaroni and cheese. You can also use it on pizza, for a pizza with a white sauce. You can also use it for layering in lasagnas. A lot of other stuff. When it comes to making mac and cheese or using this as a sauce component in a lasagna, it's good to have it as thick as possible. And that's because as the pasta bakes with this sauce, the thinner it is, means the more water, available water is in it, which means the pasta will continue to cook much more and get much more soft and not be al dente if you have a really thin sauce. And we don't want to stop whisking until all of the cheese is melted and emulsified into it. And that's our Mornay sauce, which is a cheese sauce made from a bechamel. Different examples of use of a Mornay sauce, which is our bechamel that has cheese added to it. We have two different kinds of mac and cheese. Here is a baked one with a crispy crumb topping. And here is a straight up mac and cheese, unadulterated. Just a couple of options that you can do to utilize a Mornay sauce or a bechamel.